Welcome back to the deep dive, where we take these, dense foundational ideas and really try to distill them into something you can use right away.
We're basically trying to shortcut your learning curve.
Exactly. And our mission today is very focused. We're diving into a framework of principles, and they're not specific answers, right?
Yeah.
They're more like timeless concepts for dealing with the laws of life, the laws of nature.
That's the perfect distinction.
Yeah.
We're not looking at one business strategy or a single philosophy. It's more like a whole operating system for life and for work.
An OS, I like that.
And it's all drawn from decades of, real-world experience. The whole goal for you listening is to walk away with a repeatable process, something you can use for constant improvement.
And the thing I really appreciate right from the start is this core instruction that you're given. You are told explicitly not to just adopt these ideas blindly. The critical thing is to take every idea we talk about and really ask yourself honestly, is this true? Because if you're not willing to stress test these concepts, they're just not going to work for you.
Well, they can't, because the entire system depends on having a really accurate, objective view of reality.
Yeah.
I mean, think about it. Most people, when they're faced with an unpleasant truth, like a personal weakness or a failed project.
Oh, yeah, the first instinct is to hide it.
Right. You try to minimize it, you fight it, you blame someone else. But this framework argues that it is only the unpleasant truths that really demand your attention. The good stuff is, well, it's already working. It kind of takes care of itself.
Okay, so let's maybe unpack the origin story here a bit, because I think that context is so important. The author doesn't credit his success to being some kind of genius. He actually describes himself as an ordinary middle-class kid.
With a bad rote memory.
Yeah.
He struggled in a traditional school setting.
So his path wasn't about memorizing facts. It sounds like it was built on figuring things out for himself and then just rigorously testing his own ideas.
Absolutely. You see it so early on. He's a 12-year-old caddy, and he's not just carrying clubs. He's taking his tips and trading commodities futures.
Wow.
So that early hands-on experience they kind of learned by doing, it just solidified this core idea that testing your opinions against reality, against the market, that's the only real path to getting better.
And I think that leads to this foundational realization for the whole framework, which is what actually drives us. We think we're chasing money or status.
A promotion. A bigger house.
Right. But the argument here is that those are just the bait. The universe uses them to get us to evolve, but it's the process itself, the learning, the adapting, that's what really matters.
It completely reframes ambition. The desire to evolve, to just get better at navigating life, is framed as humanity's most pervasive driving force. And if you accept that premise, then you can actually build a system around it.
Which brings us to the core engine, the 5-step process to getting what you want out of life. And it's not a one-time checklist, right? It's a loop.
It's a loop you run constantly. Let's just run through them quickly because the details are where it gets interesting. So, step 1, choose your goals. That sets your direction.
Okay.
Step 2, identify and just do not tolerate problems. Those are the things that cause you pain.
Right, the signals.
Exactly. Step 3, diagnose those problems.
Yeah.
You have to get to the root causes, not just the symptoms. Then step 4 is you sign a plan or, a machine to get around those problems.
And then the hard part.
And then the hard part. Step 5, you have to push through to completion. Execution is everything.
Okay, step 1 seems simple enough, but there's a huge trap in there, isn't there? This idea of confusing goals with desires. We all do this.
All the time. A goal is what you truly need. It aligns with your bigger vision for yourself. A desire is an immediate want that often completely undermines that goal.
We need the classic fitness example.
The perfect example. Your goal is physical fitness, long-term health. The desire is to eat that delicious, unhealthy piece of cake right now. The desire directly sabotages the goal.
So it's not saying you can't have pleasure as a goal. It's just saying you have to be honest about the consequences. If I admit my goal is immediate pleasure, that's a valid choice. The problem is when I say I want fitness, but I keep choosing the cake.
Exactly. You can pursue any goal you want, but you have to be intellectually honest about the trade-offs. If you are, you're way less likely to sabotage yourself later on.
And that honesty gets tested immediately in step 2, because going through this process, it's inherently painful.
Yeah.
And how we deal with that pain is what separates people.
Pain is the critical signal. I mean, the framework actually says that if you feel psychic pain, if you hit a really tough problem, you should feel lucky.
That's such a radical reframing.
It is. Because that painful problem is a potential improvement just screaming at you. It's signaling that progress is necessary right here. right now.
Which leads to that really powerful equation, pain plus reflection, progress. The animal instinct, when we feel that kind of pain, it's fight or flight.
Right.
But successful people, they force themselves to stop and to reflect instead.
And that requires overriding your deepest instincts. I mean, you have to calm down the emotional, reactive part of your brain and engage the rational planning part. If you can actually think clearly about the problem while you're still feeling the sting, that's when you start to get a higher level understanding of what's really going on.
But there's a huge psychological barrier to doing that, which the source calls ego. Most of us are taught that having weaknesses is, well, it's bad. It's something to hide.
Yeah, it's a moral failure or something.
Exactly. But if your goal is evolution, finding a weakness is just finding the next part of your machine that needs an upgrade.
That is the mindset shift. Successful people actively look for their weaknesses so they can address them. Ego just keeps people stuck, bumping into the same problems over and over again.
And this ties right into the neurological concept of the two U's. You have the higher level rational mind, the prefrontal cortex. Let's call it the planner U.
Okay.
And it's always in a battle with the subconscious emotional mind, the amygdala, the impulse U.
And the impulse you wins a lot. The whole point of the framework is that your planner you has to learn how to manage your impulse you to stop the self-sabotage. It's like setting an alarm for a 5 a.m. workout.
Ah, I know this one.
We all do.
Yeah.
The planner you sets the alarm thinking about the long-term goal, but it's the impulse you that hits the snooze button 4 times when that alarm actually goes off.
So how do you get the impulse U on board?
Through repetition. Good habits are formed through that classic habit loop: cue, routine, reward. Over time, that repetition moves the behavior into your subconscious. It becomes internalized learning, not just conscious memory.
It's like the difference between reading the manual on how to drive a car versus just driving.
Perfect analogy. One is slow and clunky, the other is fast and automatic. The goal is to make this whole 5-step process an internalized subconscious habit.
So now let's take that individual process and apply it to an organization, like a business or a team. The focus shifts to what's called the machine metaphor.
Right. You start to see the whole entity as a machine that's designed to achieve a goal. And that machine really only has 2 parts: the design, the processes, the workflow, and the people.
So if the machine is putting out bad results, you don't blame the weather or the market. You have to assume the machine itself is broken.
Something in the machine needs fixing. Either the design is flawed or the people aren't right for their roles. But you always look inward first.
And for that kind of self-correction to work, you need a very specific culture, an environment of radical truth and radical transparency. Frankly, it sounds terrifying to most people.
It does, but what it means in practice is creating a culture where mistakes and weaknesses are brought into the light immediately without fear. It means, recording most meetings, sharing most information.
But wait, doesn't that destroy morale? If you know every mistake you make is being documented and judged?
See, the argument is that it does the opposite. It actually builds morale because it creates trust through honesty. People stop worrying about politics or what others think they're doing, and they start focusing on what is actually true. The energy shifts from covering your backside to solving the problem together.
There's that incredible story about this in the source material. The author gets a memo in 1993 from his top people saying his management style was hurting morale. That must have been a brutal thing to read.
Devastating. But it's the perfect example of step 2 in action. He felt the pain, but instead of fighting it, he reflected. And that painful truth made him realize he had to formalize his thinking so people could understand him. That's what led to him writing down these principles in the first place.
So to build that culture of truth, the machine has to operate as an idea meritocracy. And that requires conflict.
It requires productive conflict, yes. If people are afraid to disagree, if they suppress minor confrontations to avoid hurting feelings, then all those little misalignments build up and eventually lead to a huge destructive clash.
So conflicts are actually essential for building great relationships and great designs.
You need smart people debating vigorously to find the best answer. But okay, once you have that debate, how do you decide who's right? That's where believability-weighted decision-making comes in.
Okay, let's unpack that. Believability weighted. So not all opinions are equal. Who counts as believable?
A believable person has to meet 2 criteria. First, a strong track record. And in specific, they have to have successfully done the thing in question at least 3 times.
At least 3 times. Okay.
And second, this is crucial, They have to be able to give you a great explanation of their reasoning when you probe them.
So it's not enough to have been right in the past. You have to know why you were right.
Exactly. You should pay less attention to people's conclusions and more attention to the reasoning that got them there.
The need for this kind of triangulation is so powerfully shown in that personal medical story. The author is facing a life or death decision.
A precancerous condition, yeah. He
Well,
goes to multiple world-renowned experts.
and he gets three totally different recommendations. One says wait and see, another says radical surgery, and a third says simple monitoring.
It just shows that even among the most believable people in the world, there's often no single truth. You have to dig into their reasoning, understand their assumptions, and then triangulate to form your own conviction.
And when you're managing an organization, you have to do the same thing with your people. You have to recognize how they're fundamentally wired differently.
Yeah, the classic left brain versus right brain distinction. You have your left brain people who are linear, analytical, great executors. And then your right-brained people who are big picture synthesizers, the creators.
And a good manager has to know which tool to use for which job. But how do you do that objectively instead of just going with your gut feeling?
You use tools to collect objective data. The first one is baseball cards. This isn't some fluffy HR review. It's a profile with hard data points, test results, track performance, documented strengths and weaknesses, just like on the back of a real baseball card.
So you're making decisions based on batting averages, not a single speech someone gave.
Precisely. The other tool is the dot collector. It's a real-time feedback system used in meetings. People log their observations, their dots, on what others are saying and doing. And that feedback is then weighted by the believability of the person giving the dot.
So the loudest voice doesn't automatically win.
The most believable, data-supported voice wins. It forces decisions to be based on the collective, weighted intelligence of the group, not on hierarchy or charisma.
That is a massive shift from most corporate cultures.
It is.
Yeah.
And if someone just doesn't have the wiring for a certain role, the logic is simple. You either train them, or if it's a fundamental inability, you have to design the machine around their weakness. Or you replace them in that role. You don't try to change who they are.
Which really brings us full circle, doesn't it? The goal is this constant self-driven evolution. You get there by embracing failure, diagnosing the root causes, and systematically designing a better machine, whether it's for your life or your business.
And if you look to the future, you can see how powerful this is. The author took his investment principles and literally built them into algorithms systems that make faster, less emotional, more logical decisions than a person can.
The machine outthinks the human.
In many cases, yes. And that strongly suggests that these kinds of machine thinking tools are going to become essential for any smart decision maker in the coming years.
The future is definitely already here. So maybe a final thought for you to take away from all this. The biggest mistake you can make is failing to see yourself and others objectively, because then you just keep bumping into your own weaknesses. So if you find you're chronically bad at something critical,
The logical choice is to fire yourself from that job.
right, fire yourself as the worker and hire someone or partner with someone who is wired for it. You can still be the designer and manager of your life's machine.
A provocative question to leave you with then, to mull over. If you could build an algorithm based on your most deeply held life principles, and you knew it had a better track record than your own emotional, in-the-moment judgments, would you actually trust it to make your most important decisions?